Welcome to my review of Bandai's perfect grade 1/72nd scale Millennium Falcon model kit. This is part 1, the introduction. If you just want to admire the sprues, you probably want to check out part 2. Now, the Millennium Falcon is one of the most beloved fantasy spacecraft of all time. In fact, the only other contender for this crown would have to be the Starship Enterprise. And it's sometimes hard to believe that this iconic and unusual design has been around for over 40 years. In fact, it was primarily designed by Star Wars art director Joe Johnston in late 1975, early 1976. Of course, it's not quite that simple, as there have been many different versions of the ship over the years. These boil down in model making terms to the 5-foot version, the 32-inch version, and the 2 computer graphic versions. The first Falcon was an enormous 5-foot-long model, sometimes called the 4-footer, since that's the diameter of its mighty saucer. This was built in California in 1976 for the first Star Wars movie, and served as the basis for the half-size studio set that was built that year in England. But this big model proved difficult to move around for action sequences, so a second miniature was built for The Empire Strikes Back. This stunt model was less detailed, a bit flatter, and only 32 inches long. It's sometimes called the 2-foot model, again thanks to the saucer diameter. A 360-degree full-size ship was built in England for the Ice Hangar, Space Slug, and Cloud City film sets. There were also larger partial models, and even 2 tiny models built for various one-off scenes. The 1997 special editions included a computer graphic model, a hybrid mostly based on the 32-inch model with elements of the 5-footer. And the release of The Force Awakens in 2015 featured a completely updated CGI Falcon, this time based on the 5-footer. Now, there are tons of differences between the versions, the most obvious being the 2 extra landing gear legs that were added to the Empire Strikes Back models. The 1977 Star Wars ship had only 3 landing gear boxes with 5 legs. The Empire and later ship had 5 landing gear boxes with 7 legs. The 2 new boxes are marked in green on this diagram. Yellow areas indicate where lights were installed. The Force Awakens version had the most changes, tons of extra details representing additional modifications that have been added over the years. But the details are also significantly different between the 2 main physical models. Here, for example, is the side of the 5-footer, and here's the side of the 32-incher. The Star Wars movie miniatures are a prime example of a technique called kit bashing, where parts from commercial kits are used as raw ingredients for a different model. You can see in these photos some of the original model builders gluing countless bits, that they dubbed greeblies, from various race car and tank parts over the hull of the Falcon, giving it a complex and mechanical appearance. It looks fantastic, but is very hard to replicate. So why am I loading you up with this making of nerd trivia? Well, it has a lot to do with the new Bandai product and why it's so interesting. Despite Star Wars' legacy and enduring popularity, most Falcon model kits over the years haven't been very good. I suppose it's not entirely surprising. The ship design has complex geometry and, of course, is covered in tons of tiny detail that's costly to model. In fact, no company has ever sold a truly accurate model of the 5-foot Falcon until now. Star Wars is also a kids' movie, and most companies probably figure that children aren't observant enough to know or care that they've got a big toy that's not entirely accurate. But now you have a whole generation of middle-aged people, mostly men, who are willing to throw lots of money in a vain attempt to recapture their youth, and their partners won't let them buy sports cars. The first companies to take advantage of this were arguably Japan's Fine Molds and Britain's DiAgostini. They both produced fairly detailed and expensive replicas of the 32-inch Falcon for the adult market. Then, in 2014, the world of Star Wars models totally changed when massive Japanese toy maker Bandai marched in. Best known for endless Gundam fantasy killer robot kits, Bandai took a different approach with Star Wars. They chose not to make toy-like junk for young kids and aimed for a broader market. So they make affordable, snap-together models that can be built by older children and teenagers, but which are also highly accurate and detailed, and so meet the demands of serious adult model makers. Unlike Revell, they don't condescend to the market. Here's the Bandai 144th Falcon, for example. The detail isn't as crisp as the 72nd, but still pretty good despite its tiny size. Of course, it's a Force Awakens Falcon, so here are some 3D printed parts I made to convert the maintenance pits and sidewalls to an original trilogy design. Bandai also released an even tinier Falcon in 2016, one at 1/350th scale. But in summer 2017, Bandai made all of our nerd dreams come true with the announcement of a 1/72nd kit based on the 5-foot Millennium Falcon's appearance in the very first Star Wars film. 3 landing gearboxes and all. You can't get more purist than that. And here it is. As you can see, it comes in a pretty enormous box with minimalist black and white styling. And here's the 1/72nd box, along with the Bandai 1/44th box and the tiny 1/350th box for size. With the box open, we can start to see the reason this thing is so expensive. First, the quality of the molding is excellent. Bandai have always produced extremely sharp and crisp injection molded parts, and this is as good as the technology gets for the year 2017. It's definitely sharper than the other Bandai kits that I've seen. Many of the sprues use complex multi-part molds which move sideways, allowing for overhanging areas, or enabling recesses like the tips of these cannons. Everything clips together perfectly without glue, unless you really want to use glue, and there's virtually no flash or mold misalignment to deal with. Next, the accuracy of all the components is amazing. Bandai spent considerable time researching all the original model kits that went into making the original 5-foot model, and this shows. Whether they used available fan research like this, I don't know, but it all looks pretty damn accurate to me. Now, this may sound kinda crazy. I mean, why slavishly reproduce a mere movie prop from decades ago? Well, if you're a devoted fan, this ship is an object of religious veneration. But that aside, I have to say that those original model makers back in 1977 really knew what they were doing. They were artists and craftspeople. The Bandai 1/72nd simply looks right, mainly because it is. In fact, I suspect it'll actually become a resource for people building their own Falcon models. So that's part 1 of my Bandai 1/72nd Millennium Falcon review. In part 2, I'll go into the actual sprues that make up the kit. In the meantime, I hope this video has been useful to you, and thanks for watching.